Okay, so we are continuing on with right intention, skillful, appropriate intention on the Eightfold Path. And the title of this talk is Care and Curiosity, the Heart of Intention. So I'm going to come back to something that's really very fundamental to reflective meditation, which is care and curiosity. Because we often talk about cultivating a soft, caring, curious stance towards our experience. Of course, first in meditation, but perhaps most importantly in life. Um, and we don't mean to present it as some kind of high ideal or something we imagine we could always do, um, because as soon as that happens, it can feed what's called the inner critic, an internal voice that tells us that we're not doing it right. Now, let me just be clear. When that term inner critic, I don't think there's like this separate being, this little annoying or sometimes monstrous being that lives inside of us. No, but it is just kind of a term that's used that helps us identify when our thoughts become harsh, when our thoughts are evaluating, trying to correct. Now, sometimes this voice is really, in fact, I think most of the time it's sort of conditioned into us to help us, to keep us safe, to help us succeed, to help us prevent mistakes. But it can be harsh and it can turn on us. So I'm going to suggest that part of our practice here is becoming aware of that tone. Now, this is not about trying to get rid of it because we can't really do that, at least not because we wish we could, but or by desire, we desire we could. But I think that what sort of changes it is becoming curious about it. Back to one of the um, titles of the talk, and really trying to listen into this voice. What is it really up to? What is it trying to do? What is its intention? Again, not separate from the rest of us. Um, but if we can relate to it with a little more caring, not being harsh about being harsh, because that's compounds harshness. But when we can be a little more curious and caring, it can soften it. And maybe most important, we come to not believe everything it says. It may be chattering in the background, but we can become less identified with it. And perhaps this is the way development happens, not by some fantasy that we could eliminate aspects of ourselves, but by changing our relationship to them. And, we're big on that in reflective meditation, changing our relationship to them. So, of course, reflection is an intentional component of reflective meditation built into all of our, dare I say, all or almost all of our, I kind of think I could say all of our events. I'm going to teach a clay and meditation workshop. Again, we do it at a little pottery studio nearby, and I'm going to teach another one soon. And intention even is we even do reflection in that. They meditate a little bit, they work with their clay a little bit. I think that's the order. I always forget. Anyway, I have notes, but and then they reflect on the whole experience. So reflection is really built into, I think, everything we do with reflective meditation. And that, of course, is a clear and deliberate intention when that time when we're reflecting. We're reflecting other times during our meditation, after our meditation, but that 10 minutes or whatever amount of time is given to it, that is a really clear and deliberate intention to reflect. And maybe one reason we or one thing we can gain from it, I think that would be a better way of saying it, is to become more aware of the voice of this inner critic. And again, sometimes by simply bringing awareness to that voice, it softens it. And personally, this has been one of the most beneficial aspects of the practice of reflective meditation for me. becoming more caring towards my own experience. And in turn, it just naturally you become more caring towards others. I just finished reading this memoir that I really liked, uh, Karen Armstrong. Some of you may be familiar with her. I had been when I picked up the memoir. She's written extensively on world religions, including, I think I haven't read it in probably decades now, but I thought a useful book on Buddhism. So in her memoir, I learned that struggled so bad with intense mental, emotional, and physical dukkha. I mean, she had she was not properly diagnosed, and she sort of was in the hell realm around a seizure disorder for a very long time. But but before that, or maybe at the same time of that, she was a nun in the 1960s, and she really experienced religious abuse as a nun. She came out of all that. And after a long struggle, she engaged deeply with the study of world religions, most all of them. She was a real scholar. Um, and after all this study, she concluded that compassion and empathy lie at the heart of all religions. And it's not, and it is what matters most on the spiritual path. Now, we probably all might have thought that thought about that before. I don't know, not all of us, but that's not a wildly new idea. But it was interesting from somebody who'd really deeply studied these religions. Um, and care and curiosity, that's what sets the stage, or I don't even know how to say it quite right, but it's very entwined with compassion and empathy. They go together. So, care and curiosity is especially important when things are difficult, when we're in pain, stressed, struggling. The instinctual response is to tighten, to resist, to become harsh. I even could say that pain, stress, and struggle has a harshness to it, and we can respond with more harshness. And I sort of know this from my journey with physical pain after my back surgery, or before and after. My initial reaction is very strong, but then when I'm able, even a little bit, to shift towards a more caring response, to become more curious, it changes things. Now, that doesn't make the pain disappear, but it does soften it a bit. So here we are back at the teaching of Appamada, um, or care. That is translated as care by Stephen Batchelor. And consider it as both careful attention and genuine concern for well-being. Careful attention and genuine concern for well-being. The Buddha's last words are, it said the Buddha's last words before his death was to tread the path with care. And I think that's responding to life as it is with as much care as possible in that moment. And that's important as much as possible because, of course, we know conditions matter. There's times we can be very open and caring, and sometimes we really can't. And that's not a failure. It's really the existential reality we live in as humans. Um, so rather than setting a high bar, which of course feeds the inner critic, which leads to less caring, less curiosity, but what about if we become curious about conditions, curious about when is care present, when is it absent, what supports it, what gets in the way? So, I'd like to suggest that over time, an intention to become more caring begins to emerge, not because we force it, but because it grows naturally. And in fact, part of what I think helps it grow is there's a lot of caring in the Sangha, really in all the Sanghas I teach in. And so it's kind of a lovely spiral. that, the we become more caring towards one another. I don't know where this spiral begins, by the way. And then, we become more caring to ourselves, and then we become more caring to one another, which feeds and on we go. So, appropriate, skillful intention doesn't stand apart, as we've said in many Dharma talks, really, that none of the aspects of the Eightfold Path stand apart from one another. But this intention can hopefully flows into how we speak, how we act, and how we relate to others. Now, imagination. Now, that's another translation of intention. Linda spoke about it on Monday. I'll just mark it as another translation now. Imagination, awareness, and action, as all aspects of the path, all come together in ways, but they're not linear or predictable. And of course, skillful right intention is not something that we're going to achieve once and for all. No, it's something we live into. We, moment by moment, as we become more aware, more grounded, and better able to respond with care. So there's the end of my talk for today, and we will move into meditation.